I have the stream open right here.
On the day you were born, I made 2 knives. One for myself, and when you were ready, one for you.
You think I'm weak because I'm not like you?
You do not know everything, boy.
No. But at least I know the truth now.
The road ahead is long and unforgiving. No place for a boy. You must be a warrior.
And where do you think you're going? Long way from
It will be better.
We must be better. We must never forget them.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a very special extra mile for the PlayStation Drive, where we're going to be talking all about God of War launching on PC just a few weeks ago, one of the greatest games of all time. No spoilers in this part of the review. We're going to be talking all about our thoughts about the game, how much have we played, and just talking all about it. And I'm joined by the man himself, one of the greatest out there, Mr. Sean Capri.
Man, the hype is like high. I thought I could bring hype. Holy crap! We should put you in charge more often. This is amazing. I couldn't be more excited to be podcasting with you one-on-one for the very first time in the history of ever. And we've done a couple things, but dude, this game is so damn special. And I am so excited to talk to you about it. We've got some friends here in the chat. We're recording live at youtube.com/YumiCapri. One of my favorite things that we get to do on all of our podcasts is get to take a step aside and do some real dedicated deep dives into the things that we're excited about the most. And right now, it's God of War 2018 on PC that I just recently wrapped up, man.
And if this is anything like last time, this is going to be about a 6.5 hour long show. So everybody strap in because nobody's sleeping tonight. If you are new here, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hop on over and subscribe over at youtube.com/YumiCapri. And also head over to the Patreon and toss some money so that we can keep making cool stuff for you. And also a very massive thank you and shout out to PlayStation Canada for hooking us up with review codes. We appreciate you guys very, very much. Thank you for the amazing work that you do. Now, Sean.
Ryan.
Matt,
damn it. Oh, no, I did it.
Yes.
The trigger response.
Ryan.
Oh.
Before we get any further into this, I want to ask about your history with God of War as a franchise. Have you messed with the earlier games? Have you played them? Have you ignored them? Where are you at with God of War as a whole?
Look, man, I know that my Twitter profile is me holding up the Series X like it's the Stanley Cup. But believe it or not, I have played a PlayStation game or two, and God of War 1 and 2 really are the ones that I really go back to. I didn't play when they first came out, but I played the remasters, which were excellent, just absolutely gorgeous. And so, yeah, I kind of had a similar kind of path that I think a lot of people come into this game, which was that they were action, they were extreme, the story and I think lore was there, but really what did you care about? That they were very violent and just over the top. And I was really excited to jump into this one back in 2018, which is actually when the first time I played it. I bought it on PS4. But I only got up to a certain point in the game. I don't want to get to too many spoilers, but there's a sort of head that happens. And that's basically where I got to the first time around. And then I kind of got pulled off to some other Xbox stuff because I think that's just what happens with creating content for Xbox and Nintendo. So, yeah, I always wanted to get back to it because I always appreciated what was going on here. But that's kind of my rundown leading up to today where I've now completed the game.
Exactly. So you finished it on PC, obviously.
On PC.
And we'll get into the nitty gritty. As for myself, I played God of War growing up, and exactly similarly to you, for me, I was never ultra hyped for a new God of War. I always knew that they were going to make it look bigger. They were going to make it look cooler. It was going to be more ridiculous. But I was never expecting to care.
Yes.
And this game changes all of that. So just for, my own frame of reference here, I have beat it on PS4 when it originally came out. I've spent about 12-ish hours with the PC version, and then again I just got pulled away to other stuff. But I spent a good amount of time with it, and I've played it and I've beaten it already. But yeah, okay, cool. So we've established that baseline. So what I want to know, Sean, spoiler free. We're gonna have this entire section be very spoiler free. Give me your overall thoughts. What did you think of God of War?
So I was tweeting about this the other night, right after I rolled credits, and I feel like sometimes it's too soon to say. It's like when a band comes out and their first album and somebody goes this is my favorite band ever. It's what do you mean? You've got a whole history of music to compare this to. This might be one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life, man. Like this is really, really special. I messaged Badbit shortly after I beat it. I'm like, well, this is obviously better than The Last of Us 2. Like this is up there with to me, I prefer The Last of Us 1. But this is one of the most masterfully crafted video games I've ever played. And there was a quote in the trailer that we just watched here on the stream that every human being should play this game, and I couldn't agree more. It's so special. It hits hard. This is so cliche as a dad who has but my son's about 5 years old, and the reason I want to bring that up because with my history of playing this game, this was a better time for me to play this game. Actually, than when I first played in 2018, Lincoln would have been about a year, maybe a little over a year old. And now he's coming up on 5, actually, which is hard to believe in and of itself. But the relationship that him and I have is much closer to what Atreus and Kratos have in this than Lincoln and I had back, when he was a year old. He wasn't even he's barely walking around. And there's nothing really for me to converse with him about. Now I'm talking to him and he's wondering about the world and we're going out and doing stuff. So high level, maybe greatest game ever. So and there's so much more to dive into in terms of why that's the case. But I mean, visually it's special, narratively it's special. I think it is really disciplined in its level design. It doesn't get too crazy open, but if you want to, you can go and explore. It gives you just enough layers of combat. Every single element is wonderful. So it just hit hard for me, man.
Yeah, I have to agree entirely because the biggest thing that I think about this game is how thoughtfully crafted it is from start to finish, from the camera angle, from the camera angles to the camera never breaking. There are no hard cuts outside of, a couple moments, but it's nothing okay, we're going to change, the perspective here. It's thoughtfully designed the entire way through. The combat is exhilarating. Those moments where you go up against some of those more giant creatures, as you do in every God of War,
totally a staple hallmark of the series.
It's just it's mind-blowing the entire way through, and I find it so interesting because I'm not yet a father. I would like to have kids one day, but for me, what this story really boils down to is a story about loss and about grief and about trying to be better than you were yesterday on both Atreus's part and Kratos's. This is really a story about growth and dealing with horrible things happening, and then kind of how do you get through that? How are your relationships going to help you carry through that? And it's beautifully put together while also being one of the most ridiculously badass pieces of media ever. That, without spoilers, that first major fight that you go into is one of the most anime Dragon Ball Z-esque throwdown fights out there. And it's so good. It captures you from that first second and just doesn't let go.
Let's come back to the especially that over the top. Everything is such a hallmark of the series when you jump up against this impossibly huge monster. I want to come back to that. But in terms of the themes, I agree with everything that you're saying, and I also would add on to it to say that it's there's a thread of truth and what to do with the truth. How much do you disclose? How much do you open up? And sort of it's a weird way to say it, but I think the strategy and the thoughtfulness of a parent to disclose what at what time and for what reasons to their children, and the level that you're protecting them in certain ways, but also exposing them to danger in other ways. I thought that those were just really, really profound, and the arc that both these characters go through, along with all the other characters that they mix into this world, is this is why I say things this is one of the best video games ever. I don't think there is a single wasted line of dialogue, a single wasteful or not as good character. Everyone is just as good as the last one. And then you think about where this franchise has come from, not only the violence and the over-the-top nature of Kratos and his evolution, but literally a different world. He has been transported in here, and how that ties into the entire story. It's I get a little speechless as I run in, just it's just perfect in that way.
It's just thinking back about the set pieces and the bigger moments in this game, and how the brutality that was always in front of your face with God of War, and how reserved they are when using it here. So when they do use it, it hits that much harder, and it's that much more in your face that you're did that just happen? Are you serious? So I think before we continue on, because we're going to get spoilery a little bit later, but I wanted to know your thoughts about the combat, because I think that outside, narrative aside, that's kind of one of the major vehicles
Yeah.
of fun in this game, because that Leviathan axe, man,
Yeah.
is one of the most expertly crafted pieces of weapons, and how it feels is just like throwing it and just to, I would sometimes just toss it away just to bring it back,
Yeah,
just because
man.
it's such a satisfying, like that noise, the animation, everything about it. Tell me what you thought about the combat.
Combat is, well, thinking back to the original God of War, how it was kind of like that top-down isometric kind of view. You're kind of separated from what was really extreme and intense
Yes.
violence. And in this case, you're actually, whether or not somebody might argue whether or not it's like as violent, or I think it might be still as gruesome and crazy as the other one. And I think it's because of the camera angle, pulls you down right over the shoulder into the action. And yeah, that axe mechanic is something that I would love to hear, like a GDC talk, like game developers conference kind of thing. Like I'd love to know like how they, all the different versions and iterations until they finally got it right, and what that moment would have felt like. That I think that might have been in, because didn't they do like a documentary on this game as well? Corey Barlog had like,
I think so,
some film going on back then. But yeah, the what I like about it is it is actually quite complex, even though it comes from a game series that basically just like racking buttons and hitting combos and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like there's an element here. I'm not even sure if it's a spoiler, but like things change about halfway through the game. You're like, oh my gosh, like especially somebody who's played those games and you weren't sure that was really going to show up. It's like, you guys, you nailed it. Like you introduced something new that was next level. And then later on, when a moment would matter the most, it's like, for the character and for the player, they changed it up there. I will say that I was like, it definitely took me a while to wrap my head around upgrading all my gear, my waist armor, my wrist armor, like the weapon stuff, the skills. There is a lot of playing menu the game in this one. And that was risky, I think, too, because I don't know that it was really ever quite like that. I might be forgetting something in the older games, but I think it was just like you get more powerful and now your weapon does more damage. Like I feel like that was kind of it.
As far as I remember, that is kind of what it is. You upgraded your abilities to kind of, be bigger and flashier, but I don't remember it being to this like finite of a level, because like you mentioned, it's not just that you get new loot, you can upgrade all your pieces of existing loot, and then it's just like this like balancing act of what do I want to sacrifice, what parts of these do I want to use. And even like I loved with Atreus' side of his armors, it was like it augmented his abilities more so than it did anything else, because again, like he doesn't have to worry about things like defense or agility or HP or how hard you're hitting. They messed with his abilities more on that side, which I really, really appreciated.
Me too.
Because again, it's a thoughtful way to include him in that process without him being, he's just there, right? Because like I love The Last of Us, but like Ellie being in The Last of Us, she's there with you, right? Like she doesn't feel like something you control. She's there, she's hanging out, she's her own living being. Atreus feels, I think, more just naturally ingrained in the process of it all, compared in God of War. But what I want to ask, Sean, because I think before we get into anything else, because this is the PC review, and because we are talking about it finally coming here, how did the game run for you? Because obviously, whenever you start porting anything to another platform, you start getting into, messier territory if it's not done right. How was your experience playing God of War on your PC?
I'm glad you brought it up, man, because I think I had quite a few different types of experiences with it on PC. And the way that it ran, I found that it was quite scalable, actually. And so I put it through its paces, honestly. Like I ran it trying to record it at the same time. I ran it trying to stream it at the same time. I played with a controller. I played with mouse and keyboard. I ran an HDMI, 25-foot HDMI cable to my TV out in the other room and played out there as well. Like I did it all, man. Like I really wanted to see this thing. And I have a modest PC, I think. Like I've got a pretty good processor, good RAM and everything. But my bottleneck is my graphics card. I've got a 1070 Ti, which is a couple generations old here. And that kind of capped me when I was playing just on my own to like 1440p, 60 frames per second at original settings is kind of how I played this game. So graphic fidelity looked like the PS4 Pro, I think, and with a bit of a better resolution and double the frame rate, basically. So sitting at 60 frames. So I had an excellent experience overall, actually. My one thing, though, that I'll say before I turn it over to you, though, that I found a little bit weird was, and this is such a nitpicky that now we're getting into like the PC, like, oh my gosh, like drivers and whatever, was if I was, it would scale to whatever the native resolution was for my screen. So the screen I'm looking at you on is a 1440 monitor, and I couldn't actually put that into full screen at anything but 1440p. I couldn't have full screen at 1080p, which I do for pretty much every other game. If I did 1080, it would window it, which I don't really love. And I thought that was a curious kind of like, maybe it was something with my drivers that I didn't update. But that was the one nitpick performance wise. And then the only other thing that I would say is I really hope that one day Sony figures out how to expand their ecosystem. Now that their games are coming out to these ecosystems, I would have much rather gotten trophies for this game than Steam achievements. That felt like every time they popped up, I'm like, golly, that would have been great to get some trophies. And I might even be more inclined to like play it more to go after a platinum. But I couldn't care less about Steam achievements. Like they just like, it couldn't be less than nothing for me, to be honest with you. So
yeah, likewise. And I think that's a really good point that I hadn't really heard or even thought about too much, because yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the Steam achievements. They never even crossed my mind. I completely forgot that those existed, but like, you know, being able to pop trophies alongside would have been nice. As for myself, like my computer, to be honest, I'm not the most techie person. I sent my specs that I wanted to my friend, and he sent me back. He's like, buy this computer. I bought it for me. I think I have like a super 1070, if that's something that exists. But
I feel like you said 2070 before to Ryan. I feel like I've heard you say that. Maybe do I know more about your PC than you know about your PC?
You very well could. Hold on, let me double check.
If you got it recently, it would have been hard to get a 1070, to be honest with you.
Okay, then maybe I'm full of it. I'll check, and as we talk, I'll update. But I was able to run it at Ultra when I was just playing.
Yeah.
When I added in recording on top of that, I had to drop to the middle tier. Once I started streaming, then I was playing on original settings, and I had, again, it looks beautiful the entire time. The only times that I had any sort of hiccups or stutters was, again, when I was multitasking between recording and playing on a higher graphical setting. It would slow down a little bit through some of the bigger and more bombastic moments. But again, I think that's more just because of what I was doing more so than what the game was trying to accomplish.
And do you notice too, like this is the thing that kind of drives me crazy whenever I play on PC is whenever I play on console, I'm like, however the game runs, there's nothing I can do about it. That's just like how this game is going to run no matter what happens. Whenever I play on PC, I'm like, is this my PC or is this like on console just the way stuff happens? Like, is there a lot happening in the game right now and it's going to get bogged down kind of no matter what?
So when I played back on the PS4 Pro, my experience was flawless.
Yeah.
Like I had literally no issues at any point in time. It ran beautifully. So again, I'm more inclined to think, and for a lot of the other people that I've heard talk about this game, they had very, very few issues running it. So I do think for me, it was more of my use case in this specific situation with the way I'm using my computer, that I ran into a bit more of a slowdowns. But again, if I was not recording and I was not streaming and I was just playing, I had little to no problems on higher graphical settings.
One other sort of like maybe the last real nitty gritty dorky question I have for you is how do you deal with your frames? So I capped mine at 60. I think mine probably could have pushed out more than 60, but I don't like it going from like 70 to 50. Like those are the times when I notice it more. I'd rather, if it drops from 60 to like 55, then it's whatever. I won't notice it at all. So I kind of kept things under control in that way.
I was the same way. I don't like the variable rates as much just because, again, like I feel like I notice it more if there is something going on. So yeah, I capped it at 60, and again, I had no issues there.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful, wonderful time.
Yeah,
Sean.
man.
I very, very much enjoyed it. And like something that I'm really excited and really curious about, I can't wait to see this thing on the Steam Deck, because
no
obviously
kidding.
With it being on Steam, and they've already did the whole, it's on deck. I can't wait to kind of spend some time with it on that thing, because I think that's going to be very interesting. But you bring up a really good point with the trophies, because I want to circle back around to that for a second, because I do feel like, and I hope Sony's infrastructure will start to change kind of moving forward, given how much of a success this game and their previous PC offerings have been, right? Like Horizon sold a lot when it came to PC, and then God of War has now topped that in the same time frame so far. So I really hope that we get to see more of a cohesive infrastructure across both, because it would be nice to be able to have that space to be like, okay, again, imagine playing on your PS5. No, I'm going to hop over to the PC and continue my progress just as you can in other places.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's the tech stuff. That's the nitty gritty. I feel like we're heading towards more spoilery territory. But before we get there, I want to know your thoughts and how playing this now from start to front on PC, how does this change how you feel about the upcoming sequel? And now again, not without spoilers, but like, does this get you more hyped? Are you now more inclined to pick up that on day one on your PS5? Would that, if you didn't own a PS5, would that make you more likely to pick one up? How does this kind of set that up for the future?
I am in for a great year, I think, with PlayStation. I pre-ordered a PS5 just before Christmas last year over a deal with GameStop that was so good they had to shut it down in the middle of the thing. They were giving retail value for PS4s because they don't have any PS5s to sell, so they're like, I guess we'll load up on PS4s. So long story short, I should have a PS5 in the next 18 months or so. I'm on a list of some sort. So yeah, I will be looking forward to playing this one. Now, what I will say on this is actually it might sound like a detriment, but it's actually a compliment. This game is so heavy in its narrative and just, it has left me really thinking about it. Like, even as I describe it, like I'm feeling like the sinking feeling in a good way. Like I'm just feeling its impact in my chest. And I don't know if it's like the same thing as like you finish like a really hyped up game. You're like, give me more. I'm kind of still just digesting this. I'm still processing
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really am. So like, I'm good with it being a while before I get into the next one, because this one really is occupying a really special place for me. And just like The Last of Us 1, I'm like, I would honestly be good if this was it. And just let me imagine, and we'll get into spoilers later, but just kind of imagine what would happen given the way things kind of like end off. This thing, and we know that now that there is a sequel right around the corner, this writes it leads into a sequel very easily, and it seemed very clear that that's what they wanted to do. So it's sort of like my experiences with Tell Me Why and with Life is Strange. It's like the Life is Strange games. Sorry. Those games, I need to be in a pretty specific space actually to play. Like I don't play them when they release. I play them when I'm like, okay, now let's sit down and we're going to have a time with this. So yeah, I think it's similar with the next one, because I mean, even the journey that Kratos and Atreus go through this, I'm really excited to talk to you about this, but non-spoilery. Like, I just thought that was so wonderfully done. Like they both go through a real arc here, and they go to completely, these are not one-dimensional characters at all. And the way that they adjust with one another and the way that the characters around them kind of play in concert with it. I don't know. I need to be in the right place. So I hope that when it releases, that's when I'm ready for it. But at this moment, I'm like, I kind of still want to be in this world and go finish everything else up, do a bunch of side quests and just be with Atreus and Kratos as they are now. Because God knows what's going to happen next, man. Because we all saw what happened to Ellie, for goodness sakes. So, how about you?
So for me, like, yeah, I'm just being back in this world makes me so excited to come back to it with what Ragnarok will be and whatever it is. Because I trust, Sony Santa Monica. I trust what they're doing with it. So I feel like similarly to you, when it comes, I feel like I will be ready for it. Especially because, again, I've played it already, and this for me was like more of like a refresher, coming back to it and being like, remind me of what I missed, or remind me about what I forgot about. Because again, it's been like almost 4 years since I played it the first time. So for me, this was kind of like, it raised my hype again. And I'm not one to replay games. Generally speaking, I'm a one and done kind of person. I'm not one who will revisit a game over and over again. It's just, I don't know why. I get bored knowing where I'm going. But it had been long enough that I didn't remember every story beat. I didn't remember every single thing that happened every single second along the way.
Yeah.
And coming back to it made me appreciate it even more, being like, this really is one of the greatest games of all time, start to finish.
Yeah.
Very quickly for me to clarify, I have an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Ti. That's what I have. That's my graphics card.
It wasn't even close.
No, it wasn't. Not even close.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
well,
right.
I want to jump on this for a little bit too, like this notion of this story and the two main characters, they have a road in front of them. They have a lot of challenges, and the relationship gets really put through the ringer on this. And I feel like that as a premise could lead maybe a lesser writer to put them into more cliche and just kind of like, I don't know, not as good situations or predictable kind of situations. And I don't think that there's much predictable about this at all. Or even like writing it in a way where like, let's find out what the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to these people, and let's see what happens when we do that. And I find that a lot in entertainment these days, and I'm quite kind of triggered by it, where I'm like, that's not creative to me. Like, oh, you made us like fall in love with this couple, and then one of them got like hit by a train when they were like 9 months pregnant, and oh, and by the way, they just learned that something amazing about their dad or whatever. Like, I feel like This Is Us. Yeah. Like, This Is Us is that, and I just can't stand. I feel like there's Parenthood, and there's a bunch of like entertainment out there where they give you these characters to love and just like pull them limb from limb and have just these emotionally torturous scenes. And this still has an emotional impact without doing that, without being there's no tropes, there's no emotional tropes happening here.
It's not emotionally manipulative, which
yes,
a lot of those other kinds of series can be. And you know what? While you were talking earlier about kind of, your relationship with your child and what to say, what not to say, when to say, how much to say. Again, in the hands of lesser writers,
yes,
they very quickly could have taken that in a very CW-esque route, where on stuff like Arrow and The Flash, every time it's like, I'm hiding it because I have to protect them. There's never anything more than that than just like, I have to protect them. But with Kratos, you really do feel the weight of what he's going through every step of the way. And very minor spoiler, because the first time it happens is very early on in the game. But one of the first times when Kratos is trying to console Atreus, and you can see his hand starts to go for him, and then the pullback, the anxiety, you could see him get nervous and anxious about, is this the right thing to do? And again, like the telling and not telling, the showing and not showing is so well put together compared to other series or other shows or either other games that just kind of, smack you over the head with it and be like, hey, isn't this clever? It's like, there's no kind of wink and nudge. They're like, this is an actually emotionally honest story. And of course there are highs and lows. Of course there are parts that's kind of like, really, but those happen so few and so far in between that it's kind of like, you understand where they are all at. And I think one of the most brilliant things about this game is, as excited as I am to see Kratos and Atreus in the sequel, I am equally as excited to see some of those side characters and characters who you get to know throughout the course of the game, where I'm like, I almost want to see where they're going more than these main two, because I'm just so curious and how well some of these other characters are put together that I'm dying to find out where some of these characters are going and how their relationships will change in the sequel and how things will be different, because it has to be, it's going to be all over the place. And with a title like Ragnarok, I think we have to prepare ourselves for a little bit more of this emotionally, bruising that might be coming. But it's incredible, dude. I can't wait.
I feel like I need to study up on Ragnarok. It seems like everybody knows what this thing, like, is it a play? I don't know what it is. What is
Ragnarok?
Is it like are they going to another, like, are they going to another realm? Like, what is it?
So Ragnarok is basically the end of everything. It's the fabled, like, everyone dies, all the gods are gone. It's like basically the end. It's like the end of the world.
Armageddon is my favorite movie. So this is God of War Armageddon is what you're saying.
Essentially that. Yeah. So like Ragnarok is like the foretold end of times. Like, this is when everything happens. And like depending on
holy crap, it all clicked into place just now, man. Okay, we'll get into it.
Depending on what kind of how you're reading it and different interpretations of it, sometimes it's cyclical. Ragnarok always happens and then life restarts, and then Ragnarok happens and life restarts. And in some cases it's Ragnarok is it. Once Ragnarok hits, game over, everything's done. So that's why things get really, really interesting with this, where all of this could be heading, because we're heading towards the theoretical end times.
Okay, very cool. Okay, I didn't know it. Like I said, I didn't know if it was a place. You could have told me anything. Honestly, that sounds That sounds incredible. I'm a little more hyped up, especially as the final kind of like thing that you come to learn in the game. It's kind of interesting now.
Yep. Very interesting.
I'm walking a line here for sure. Is there
We
anything
are-
else you wanted to chat about before we get into like there's puzzles in this thing that I think were actually quite good. You throw your axe around, you spin a thing, you're I don't know. Like it's not nearly as interesting, I don't think, as really a lot of the other things I think we've chatted about. But it's a very complex game. It's very well thought out on every front. So I don't know. I don't know why I brought it up. I'm not sure if there's much else to say about it.
Just tossing it out there,
Yeah.
seeing what lands. But no, I think that's a great point to kind of end this initial conversation. Do we have any non-spoiler questions and thoughts?
Yes, we do.
Before
Good-
we
good
get into
call.
the spoilery stuff?
Yes. TPR comes in. He says, spoiler-free question here. How was God of War 2018 influenced your decision of Ragnarok? I know for myself that completing God of War a few years ago only left me wanting to play more in this God of War saga with these characters and gameplay systems. Ragnarok is by far my most anticipated game outside of Elden Ring, hoping it releases this year. And TPR, apologize, probably could have brought that up a little bit earlier if I was a better host, but I am no Ryan Turford. I think just to reiterate for me, like I think I just hope that I'm in the right space when it does land. The fact that there's no release date at this moment is fine by me because I'm still processing. But how about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm ready. They could tell me it's coming out tomorrow, and I'd be ready to go. For me, like replaying as much of this PC version that I did just again, like I'm just chomping at the bit to continue into it. But to kind of build on TPR's question very quick, because I know when we were talking before we started streaming and recording, you mainlined a lot of it,
Yes.
right? Are you interested and are you going to be diving back into the world to see more of it, to do more of the side content? The Valkyries are incredibly difficult and not my kind of content, but is there enough for you to kind of jump back in to continue the story for what it is, or are you kind of good with the mainline path that you took?
Can I say both? I haven't quite decided yet, but I am compelled to go back. There are the Valkyries that are in there, which are these two kind of like insane, or maybe more than two.
9.
There's 9. Oh
9.
my god. Okay, so yeah, no, I'm not going to finish everything. To the point earlier, if trophies were a factor, I think I might be more. I might feel a bigger pull. And the other thing too that I will say, maybe back to the technical side, is I wish there was cross save. I wish there was a way for me to pick this up on my PlayStation and play on my couch, because as much as I loved playing this on PC, and there's a couple games that I still like playing on PC, I'm in this chair all day long, man. I'm in this space like for a lot of it. So yeah, I would like to even just the flexibility of like tonight, I just want to play on my TV, and to the point where like that's exactly what led me to the 25-foot HDMI cord to the TV out there. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. We'll find out. Like, I have a lot of games to get to as well. So
it's not like we're not in one of the busiest times of the year, and it's February.
Yeah. We had a question coming in from the Muffin Man, Kevin from XPlay, actually. He says, Corey Barlog has talked about how having his own child inspired him to make this game about fatherhood. Being a father yourself, Sean, how did these themes impact you? What was your thoughts on the relationship between Kratos and Atreus and this story told there? Yeah, I think I can expand on this a little bit, Matt, if that's okay.
By all
Like,
means.
this is one thing that like every decision and every interaction between these two, I think you can feel that this comes from a parent. But I also don't think that negates the experience that some people might have as a child, and some people can really reflect on the interactions that they've had with their parents. And what I hope in that way is that kids can see maybe a little bit of the complexities that a parent might go through, that they're really trying to do the best for their kid, but they're imperfect. And especially with Kratos, like his history is so messy, and he's just trying to be better than that. But like he really has no reference to it. And for me, like I often think about how I want to be able to demonstrate and communicate the best that I can, but you almost have to be constantly translating. This is what I'm finding, is that I constantly have to translate, because Lincoln is not a 37-year-old man. He's a 4-year-old boy, and he doesn't have the vocabulary or experience or the context. He doesn't even have, like, his sense of time is different than mine. And, that speaks to where maybe when you're a little bit older, you learn the value of patience, but when you're younger, you don't understand, like, why would you wait? Let's just do this now and let's just jump on in. And the disappointment that you would have being clear in your instructions and still having your son disobey. There's a couple of instances where Atreus goes like, nuts to you, like I'm gonna go jump after this thing. And Lincoln would do the same thing. Like, it's a very realistic impulse for Atreus to have. And it's like, you're scared for the, like, you've told this kid to be safe, and he has no idea, like, the danger that he's in. Now, when I'm talking about danger, it's like he's going to fall down the steps and this guy's going to get eaten by a giant snake, maybe. So it's like both disappointment in the disobedience of the kid, but then also, like, now he's like almost dead and you've got to like protect him, and a lot of that, which kind of brings me into maybe the last point about this that I'll speak to, which is the protecting. Every single time Atreus is sort of like falling or in danger, Kratos puts himself between Atreus and the ground or another axe or whatever it is. It's constantly like, behind me, boy, where he'll grab them when they're falling and he'll turn his back and he'll slam on the ground, and he's constantly doing that. And it's like, that is what a dad would do. Even if they do have a strained relationship, a dad would do whatever he could possibly do on that front. Now, before I could go on and on about this, but I want to talk to you about like the journey that they're on, which is Kratos' wife, Atreus' mother, has passed away. They're on a journey to go to like kind of carry out her final wishes. What did you think about? You don't even know who this character is. There's not really any reference to her in the old games. You're introduced to Kratos in this world, and his wife has passed away. So, like, how did that whole like kind of thread hit you?
You know what really surprises me about that entire point is that you feel the weight of her through the entire game. She is a character that you just feel her importance without ever having to actually meet her.
Yep.
And the fact that it's crafted in that way, because again, like she's referenced constantly. You can on both behalves, right? Both Kratos and Atreus mention her more than once. You can feel the loss. You can feel how lost Kratos is.
Yep.
And even in the opening hour of the game, right? Like, you know, Kratos takes Atreus hunting and he's like, you've never done this before. It was always mom, right? Like, just the way that she's spoken about, just, you can tell how much they both love and care about her. You can tell how much they both love and care about each other, even though they don't know how to show that or how to interact with each other in a really fundamental way, because she was always there.
Yeah.
I find it like so interesting that, because again, to your point about something like The Last of Us or other media, you know, other pieces of media that really do string you out once they make you fall in love with someone.
Sorry, I meant This Is Us. The Last of Us is totally like, This Is Us, not The Last of Us. Yeah, okay.
But The Last of Us also does this where like they introduce you to the character, and then, I mean, spoilers for the first Last of Us if you haven't played it yet. Close your eyes for the next 5 seconds. But, you know, you feel that loss immediately, right? You just start to love the character and then they're gone.
Yeah.
They very easily could have done that in this game, or we could have met her. We could have spent a bit of time with her, and then we could have lost her.
Oh, good point.
I feel like the way that they do it just makes it feel, you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it, regardless of whether you met her or whether you saw her leave. You feel her loss the entire time.
And I think very specifically to that, the way that you feel that, and I think, again, this comes from, it's written from the perspective of somebody who, at the time, he was married. I think they've since split. I feel his recognition in his wife's ability to lead the family. And I think that maybe a lot of husbands can feel like this as well, where it's like, man, like if Chelsea was gone, I would be just as lost as Kratos. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do right now? Like, she took care of everything. She ran the house. And what I think you feel in it is, yeah, the confusion between the two of them, but I think more so that the character of his wife, the mom, carries through in her wisdom of her final request, which was to put these two on a journey that would bond them in this way. Like that's such a wise decision. It's such a wise instruction that I'm not entirely sure if Kratos really knew that that's what it was, or if he just realized that later on. I feel like he was still like keen to it. He was still aware that that's what she wanted, and that would have been a result of them going on this journey together. But that being her final wishes, I think was very pointed, so that they would figure this out. That they would have to go over this hurdle of not really knowing who each other are, but they'll figure it out. They'll get there.
And what's beautiful about it too is that even though she sets them on this journey, she had no way of knowing what they were in for.
Right.
And the level of crap that they would go through to finally, get to her last wish. And I'm so glad that narrative plot point never feels less important compared to everything else that's going on. The weight of like the fact that, what she asks you to do, and the fact that is, where the game takes you, doesn't make anything less of anything else that happens. But the fact that moment hits as hard as it does, and the fact that everything that builds up to it feels just as important as that point where you start.
Yeah, man.
It's incredibly put together.
It's so great. One more question from Todd Oxtra before we move into spoilers, because we are just like, we're tapping on landmines here. Todd Oxtra at Toxtra on Twitter says, what was the bigger accomplishment with the game? Kratos became an awesome character, Atreus wasn't an annoying kid, or the axe mechanics were better than the Chaos Blades?
For me, it's Kratos as a character becoming awesome, because you could have done, we have examples of kids that aren't annoying in video games. We have examples of fantastic mechanics built around weapons. What this game needed more than anything else was for you to care about why these things are happening. Otherwise, it would have just felt like, here's the next God of War.
Yeah.
But the fact that they managed to risk everything and make Kratos into a believable human feeling character, even after everything that he's been through, I think that is the biggest testament to what this game does, because everything else after that is almost like the whipping cream and the cherry on top, because you need to build around Kratos coming back into this world, and whether Kratos is going to be as instrumental moving forward. Anything could happen. Like you said, like you mentioned with The Last of Us 2, anything could happen. But they needed to prove to you why you needed to care about Kratos for anything else to matter. So in my opinion, that was the most important part of what they did. But what about you, Sean?
I'm kind of with you. I'm almost tempted just to like explore some of these others for a quick moment. But I will say that I think this is so in touch with the community, the PlayStation community, and where were most of us who played those original games? We were somewhere between like 10 and 16 years old playing the original God of Wars, and where were we mentally, emotionally, and just where was our maturity? It was right where those games were at that time, which was how many decades ago. Which is crazy to think about. And so like the core audience, the people who grew up with God of War and like, yeah, kill him and boobs and blah, blah, blah. We all grew up, and many of us are parents right now. And so what I'm trying to say is like, they were so in touch with like who played those original games and where were they then and what were they into? Extreme 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. Decades later, that group who knew Kratos back then, we're not interested in that anymore. We're not playing Duke Nukem anymore.
Yeah.
Many of us are parents. And so like that, just being aware of where the audience has gone, the journey that they've gone on, and then you thread that through with Kratos is so smart that like anybody else who tries this will like just look like they're copying God of War, like
I know. It's
just like, it's impossible. Nobody's done this before. I'm really racking my brain on that. So I agree with you. That probably is the biggest accomplishment. I guess maybe on the second point of Atreus was an annoying kid, I'll tweak that just a little bit to say like I was surprised, and it was an accomplishment to have me care about Atreus as much as I really did, because he really could have been just like you're kind of annoying, and you're just kind of like slowing us down. But yeah, like he became integral to the story, to what's going to happen next. Like And I actually really liked having him as a combat kind of partner as well. Like the way that I crafted his gear and equipment really just felt like it melded in with how I wanted to play. So yeah, man, that's a great question because it kind of just tackles the three real keys of the game as well.
Yeah, and especially because like, and I do think there are times when Atreides, wow, I just combined them. Atreus does get annoying, but as someone who's worked with kids, it is believable annoying. It's not this like this kid is going through a lot. Of course, he's going to have less than perfect reactions to some of these things, and even there are times when, again, I'm kind of like, oh, come on, Atreus, stop being like this. It's like I've dealt with kids in this like not in this exact situation, but like who have these kinds of reactions to stuff, and it's just like, all right, let's go, I'll go buy you ice cream, come on, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's just like, even when he's being annoying, it doesn't take away from the experience because it feels real, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and it reminds me of one of the last questions too about like, you know, the being a dad and that experience. And if you've worked with kids, I think that you've probably experienced this as well, is as much as we've talked about how Kratos is trying to teach Atreus all these things, survival and how to be a warrior and combat and blah, blah, blah. How much does he learn from Atreus? Atreus is like this, his own person, his own brain, his own, like he's been studious and he's listened to the stories and he's internalized them. And he is a way of explaining this world to Kratos as well. So that's the dynamic between the two. It's very much a two-way street between them, which I think just adds to everything and maybe explains a little bit of why this hits so much. It's not just Kratos being a protective dad. It's like, well, Atreus is an individual. He's lived a life up until this point, and he kind of like lets that spill out into the narrative and experience here as well.
Yep, well said. Well said, Sean. I think it's about spoiler o'clock. So for everyone, let's vamp for a couple seconds here. Give people time to frantically pull their cars over onto the side of the road and slam that pause button on their phone so that nobody gets into any sort of trouble. Okay, this is long enough. We're gonna get into some spoilers, everyone. So again, if you haven't played or you don't want to hear, this is now the time. Spoiler warning. Sean,
do you want to like
what
just,
a game.
Do you want to just jump right to the like? There's like one word that you can really say at the end here. Loki. Oh my God. Chills, man. Chills. And because it speaks to everything that we just talked about, how like Kratos doesn't know anything. And I don't know exactly like how these timelines work, and if like Loki kind of like has already existed and he's like a re-embodiment of something, or if he's about to become, I don't know. It seems like everything it's like when you talk about Thor and you got all these other characters, it's like this stuff has already happened. It's legend. So when they say that he was going to be called Loki, like is he an original Loki or what? But in any case, what a secret to have been held the entire time, and what a wonderful way to reveal it, because it's a result of the journey that they went on, the stuff that they saw on the walls, and Kratos being so ignorant to like this entire other world. He's like, call him Loki. Like that doesn't sound terrible in turn. Like he's not going to be the bringer of the end of the world, you know?
Which is why I'm so curious to see how the rest of this is going to play it now, because again, traditionally we have the son of Odin, a very absent father, someone who wasn't really there that much, but like we start to see that change in Kratos. So I really do wonder, are we going to get a Loki that we are more familiar with, or are we going to get a Loki unlike one that we have really seen before? Are they going to keep elements? How is that all going to cross over? Because we're very much in like the thick of it now. We're getting to the point now where things are going to get weird. The thick of it. And even like the Thor tease at the end, right? Like we have a fundamental base for how we think these relationships could work, which makes it a very interesting position to end this game on, to be like, all right, no, hold on. What does any of this mean now? And how is any of this going to change going forward? And what a brilliant way to bring in somebody that, again, whether it's the MCU, whether it's because you're a fan of mythology or anything else, the name Loki will resonate to some extent.
Big time.
Right?
Big time. I want to bring in, I'm going to be a bit of a better co-host this time around. I'm going to bring in Andrew Semichek from We the Nerdy. He says, question for the God of War review. What did you think of Atreus being Loki, and where do you see his character going in Ragnarok? This was such a great reveal, man. I'm so, just so happy that they had a moment like this at the end of it. I think that we saw maybe little hints as to where maybe this character can go, and I'd be interested to know, like, for people playing this game once or twice, like, knowing that this is Loki, there's a sort of middle section of the game where Atreus finds out that he's a god. He kind of learns a little bit more about Kratos and his whole history. He's like, wait a second, that means I'm a god. We're both gods. We're a huge deal. Like, he kind of gets pretty big for his britches there, and it's like, ooh, like, this is the whole, I didn't want to tell you. You're kind of like demonstrating, like, I didn't want to light you up about this. So, but his natural tendencies when he discovered that there's something there was to kind of be a shithead. And maybe, like, that's the true nature of Loki, I think.
Yeah, to get very snarky, to get very, like, crappy to others. And that's where I'm really, really curious, Sean, because Loki as a character, we'd never really see him this young in this space, which is why, like, I'm really curious to see, do we get some sort of time jump? Do we get something else going on here? Do we get a passage of time to where Loki might be more of a teenager or a late teen or a young adult, right? Because I feel like Marvel is notorious for how it cuts its trailers and for what it shows you compared to what's actually happening in the movie. I wonder if PlayStation is starting to almost like play by the same, same playbook. Because
we haven't seen anything.
We've seen some,
like, barely. Like, that's what, relatively nothing.
But that's what I mean. I wonder, is what we've seen an accurate representation of what is actually going to be going on? There's a
line in the game that Kratos says, like, this isn't my story, this is your story. And that line, like, really resonated with me. And I'm wondering if that's sort of like the passing of the torch. Like, that's to the question. It's like, could you see Atreus being the main character? Very similar to, I mean, we're in spoiler territory, I guess, but, like, bye, Joel. Like, you are not the protagonist anymore, man. Like, that would be wild. It'd almost be, like, too similar. And I wonder if they could even get away with that. For me, like, what I kind of hope happens is actually they actually become kind of like villains in a way. They become Atreus and him have some sort of, like, moment, and he's going to become the villain in a way, which actually reflects on this story with is it Balder and Freya?
Yeah,
dude. Like, I mean, we're gonna have to come back to that as well. But, like, what if Atreus is no longer, like, your friend? What if he, like, kind of goes on to the other side, and you've got to, like, kind of have a very similar path that Freya had, where she still loved him even till the very end. She would have let Balder kill her. He had his hands wrapped around her neck, and she's like, okay, I love you.
See you later.
Holy crap, this game, man.
And that's what I'm so curious, because then, there's a lot of people asking because they, the directors of the game, both Cory Barlog, and I forgot the person who's directing the sequel now. But, like, they basically said this is the end of the Norse duology.
Oh, that's right. Because they didn't want to be telling the same story for a decade or something. Yeah.
They said that, they're done with this space. Now, does that mean that they do, like, I know a lot of people are calling out, like, have them go after the Egyptian gods or whatever it is. But, like, do these two characters continue on together, or is this the end of God of War?
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like, does whatever the next game come out, is that simply going to be called Loki or God of Mischief or whatever else? Because I feel like they're going to have to quite drastically change the gameplay, because Loki is not a brawler in the same way that Kratos is. To kind of copy paste that same style of gameplay, you're going to have to get into much more magical trickstery, like, combat.
Yeah.
So, like, and that's just not God of War anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is totally fine. If that's where the natural progression is headed, if it's still more, Kratos and Atreus after this, I hope we get them in a different, mythology. If Ragnarok ends with Kratos passing on, then I want to see Atreus and Loki in the driver's seat, but I want that to be something else but just a continuation of the story, just not God of War anymore.
Man, yeah, well said. It's super. You can see them doing it a couple of different ways. Like, I almost couldn't see them, and maybe it's just because I'm thinking of The Last of Us 2. Like, you get to a certain point, and then you kind of like reset to the beginning, and now you're gonna play as like Atreus instead. Like, they really could have like playing just two sides of the same story, and that being two halves of the same game. That I could definitely see. I could definitely see that. I want more. Like, Freya utters one of the most hellacious threats to Kratos and Atreus at the end after he snaps his neck for real. In the end there, like, she's just like, she's not having it. She was absolutely prepared to die. She was prepared to protect her son and didn't change her mind after her life was saved by Kratos. And it's like, what role is she going to play in this? She seems to have a very special connection with Atreus as well. We're in spoiler territory, Dano, live in the chat, as he's like, wait a second. So anybody jumping in now, it's we're spoilers now.
I think I just got spoiled.
Yeah, we
Sorry,
are in
Dano.
spoiler territory now, guys. For the live audience.
Yeah, I agree. Freya is one of my favorite parts of that game.
Yeah.
Because you very much see like the parallels of her story with Baldur to Kratos's with Atreus gets into very interesting territory with the parallels between them of being too protective, but Kratos eventually trusting Atreus enough to kind of be there properly, with Freya's incredible unwillingness to do that, to the point where she literally took all pain away from Baldur,
right,
leading to like a very disastrous relationship for them. And I can only imagine that she is going to be on you this next game. Like, she is going to be coming after you in a very fundamental way. And like, I am not looking forward to however that fight shakes out, because it's going to be a difficult one to play through.
Everybody had, like, their powers were so profound in this, and not in a cheesy way, just like, really, holy snap, like, what would it be like to fight somebody who doesn't feel anything? And what capabilities does she have as this crazy witch lady? And and what we haven't talked about actually is the two dwarves. Brock and I can't remember the other dude's name. The blue guy and I can't remember his name. He's
Singrid, something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name now.
How can I spend so much time with it and not even know the damn character's name? I apologize, guys. But he is. You've got the blue guy Brock, who is pretty. Kind of reminds me of Hellboy in a way. Just very gritty. Just very like gets his hands dirty.
Sindri.
Yes. Sindri, like a germaphobe. Like he gets grossed out very easily. And these guys are like, they're comic relief, but they also have a very touching narrative thread to them as well. But there are so many times it's like, hey, look at this head, let's throw this head at you. Or even just like them talking about like, you're inside the snake, and he's just like, like he's gagging, and it's just so well performed too. Like the writing of it is one thing, but also the performances in this game are special as well.
But I think, and surprisingly enough, the fact that we have gone this long without bringing up Mimir is wild, because he is, again, like alongside Freya, one of the best side characters in any game ever. The fact that like I would literally just chill in the boat listening to him, even though I had reached my destination, because I was dying to hear how the story played out. Perfectly acted. The voice work is immaculate. The writing is so good. I was kind of like when you first get him, I was kind of like, this is kind of gross. Like, I don't know how much I want to have this. I don't know how much I want to have this severed head, on my waistband for the rest of the game. But like, one of the best. One of the best.
Yeah, I mean, you really can run through the cast, and it honestly is probably less than 10 characters, I think, through and through, like 10 speaking roles, maybe. And that's the discipline that I'm talking, and everyone matters. Every single one of them, I think, plays a really awesome role, whether they're upgrading your gear, or they're battling you to the death, or they're attached to your hip, or they're a boss who is kind of insane and provides this opportunity for, like, was it Thor's kids who Atreus like knocks over? He's like, he was unarmed, and there's parallels all over the place. The foreshadowing. Atreus has his moment, and then at the end, Baldur's defeated, and Atreus says, like, you know, he's not a threat anymore. And you're just like, no, you don't do that. Like, there's so many moments where something is happening, and I'm like, this is where, you know, I'm involved in this game. I'm shaking like my controller and I'm yelling at the screen like I'm at a movie theater. Like, don't go upstairs. Like, get out of the front door. He's behind you. Like, I'm
not the basement.
Exactly. Like, that was me with this game. I was very, very invested with every single moment. Like, don't let this guy go. Like, you gotta kill him. But even that had its killing a god has consequences. And holy crap, man! Like every beat. So good, and they didn't have to have a cutscene necessarily to really make it. It was all from the same, pretty much the same perspective. It just kept you in it.
Yep, and I think, you know, as we kind of mosey on down towards the end of this conversation, we have to talk about the blades, because that moment, I was convinced that was not going to happen in this game. I didn't think we were going to get them back. Like, my first time through, I was kind of like, there's no need, right? Like, we had the axe. The axe is amazing. And then when you get there and you start to see like he's like amping himself up mentally to be able to do this again. And then you have like what is it, Athena? Like this like ranked out, like gross looking version of her behind him as he's like trying to do this.
Very
and
ghoulish.
And like the conversation that they have, and it's so cool. And then to go out there and you just start decimating everything around you, and to be like, okay, the blades feel amazing.
They're full of rage. They're full of, and it was a desperate move at a desperate time. Like, that's kind of when I was alluding to it in the non-spoiler part. It's like you needed to have something like that happen in order for him to resort to that. Like, which, by the way, I found it funny that he was like, I thought he was going to be like locked away behind like a boulder that nobody could move or whatever. It's like, it's under a plank and kind of like wrapped up in a sheet kind of thing. Like, it was, it's like an alcoholic who's like, I will never drink again. I'm just going to put this like bottle of booze like in the tank of the toilet kind of thing. Like, it's right there, very accessible. But in any case, it felt like the right moment, the right thing for that time, because they had to go to hell. And it made sense with every angle. It wouldn't have made sense for him to go like, oh, we're on this journey, I better get my blades back. Like, which people would have been hyped about it because they're very special and they're an icon of the series. But it was, there's nothing else he can do right now. Like, his axe is not going to work in hell, which also is kind of interesting to think of hell not as hellfire and brimstone. It's freezing cold down there, so you got to get your flame blades kind of going, which I was out loud just, oh my god, like the whole time, as it was a very important moment for sure.
And it's like the fact that like we've gone through this entire conversation, we didn't even talk about, you know, the dragon fight. We didn't even talk, like there are so many massive moments, the fights with, you know, Thor's kids. Like, there's so many huge moments, and even just like the beginning of the Baldur fight, right? When you're like in the sky, like, and like, you know, falling. It's just, there's so many massive moments that each one of them, and I think that's the biggest thing about this God of War compared to everything else. The big moments here are big because, yes, in terms of spectacle, but also because you are so emotionally invested that everything is just heightened to another level. Yeah. So, Sean, closing thoughts. What did you think of God of War?
Give me my QuickTime events back in Ragnarok, and I'll be stoked about it. I'm just kidding. No, man. Like, I think one of the reasons I wasn't really articulating it very well with in the spoiler-free chat was I'm almost worried that they'll ruin it with the next one. Like, this game is so good that there's always the risk that where do you go from here? How do you make a better game than that? And I think that's where, like, I'm protecting the game and I'm setting up my walls. I've got some defense mechanism stuff going on here because this one is special, man. And these kind of games only come once in however long. Like, it's very, very rare. I actually think maybe the last time I was hit by a game like this was probably The Last of Us. Truly, like this is the thing about Sony exclusives, man. They when they hit like this, it's very, very special. But everybody says that. You know, you hear everybody say, and that's why I said in my tweet, like, this isn't news to anybody, but this is one of the best games ever made. But when you hear everybody say, like, it's the best game ever, it's the best game ever, somehow I don't like, it has the reversed effect on me. I go, can't be. Like it should. That's not what my reaction should be at all. I should be like, well, obviously a lot of people love this game. It's probably special. Instead, I go, everybody is like overextending and they're hyperbolizing on this. And no, man, no, nothing. I feel like 10 out of 10, like whatever scale you want to put this on. This is so special. So I'm just glad I finally got around to it. It was the right time for me, and yeah, I'll be thinking about it for years to come, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you saw it through to the end, because again, like it takes those moments for it to click. And you're 100% right when it comes to, Sony first party. What really blows me away, with just outside of a couple exceptions, any one of these games, be it The Last of Us, be it God of War, and I'm even going to put stuff like Spider-Man and Horizon on that list.
Yeah,
could be someone's favorite game.
Yep.
Right? Like, and God of War has that spot in so many people's hearts, and I'm so glad that they've now brought it to PC in a way that more people can play it. And even just outside of people who don't own a PlayStation, people who might not have been able to play it on PlayStation because of accessibility reasons, the fact that you can now remap all the controls, the fact that you can now have much more time and space in there to play with the settings and to just make it more available to people all around the world. So I'm very happy, and I hope that this continues to be a trend, because again, these games are special and they deserve to be played and they deserve to be celebrated regardless of where you play. So I'm glad that it's on PC. I hope that we're going to see this trend continue. Sean, thank you so much for rocking with me. This was an absolute awesome episode. I'm so glad we got to talk God of War together. If people wanted to find more of you, Sean, where could they do that?
Find me on Twitter and on Twitch at Sean Capri, Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. And what I will say in closing is, this is what creating content and podcasting and just being part of video games is all about, man, is playing a game and then geeking out with your friends about all the awesome things that happen about. I love dissecting this game with you, man. I feel like maybe we could do this maybe once more, and then I think we could do it again.
I think so.
Cool, maybe. Man. Thanks for letting me jump on into the PlayStation Drive, man. This is super fun.
Yeah, I'm super stoked that you got to rock with me. It's always a pleasure. I love talking because I feel like we geek out in a very fundamental way together, Sean, which is what I appreciate. And as for myself, you can find me over on Twitter at burnout_Matt. You can find me over on youtube.com/burnoutbrighter, where we're doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. And make sure you follow all things Yumi and Capri, including that Patreon. Go hit it up. So much cool stuff you can find there, including one of my favorite named podcasts, which I'm going to throw to Sean very quick to throw out the name because I can never remember the full title. The Pants
Patreon podcast for patrons podcast is an exclusive bonus podcast for supporting Yumi and Capri.
There you go, which is why please head over there. Please like, subscribe, and share. Massive thank you to PlayStation Canada for supporting us with codes for the game. Thank you, everyone. We will see you on the next one.